So I could talk about Trae Young going off or Donovan Mitchell playing great, but instead I'm going to talk about a guy who's played 55 minutes this season, Michael Porter Jr. for the Nuggets, their lottery pick of 2 drafts ago, who at one time was thought of as maybe the top prospect in that draft because of his height and shot creation and shooting abilities and all that, right? Well, they have not thrust him into the fire so far, as he's got a bunch of dudes playing ahead of him. Torrey Craig, Malik Beasley, Jeremy Grant, if we want to consider Michael Porter Jr. to be a power forward, Gary Harris, Will Barton. Now, I do mention that, what position is Porter? I guess that's one good thing, is because he can play so many different positions, it's going to make it a little easier to insert him into lineups. I mean, I think you can play him with basically any combination of guys on this team, whether it's playing with Millsap and Jokic, so Porter plays the 3, or you put Jokic, at center, of course, or even Jeremy Grant or Millsap as a small ball 5, and then you have Porter at the 4. There's so many different things you can do there, so that's good. And I do expect Mike Malone to explore those things more. And when you look at some quotes, Mike Malone, he hasn't forgot about Michael Porter Jr., but I think right now he just views him as another player that he can go to off the bench. And, I mean, in one sense, that's cool because we see times where coaches just kind of forget about dudes completely. At the other side, though, it's like this guy has way more potential than almost this whole roster. I mean, Jokic, higher ceiling, yes. And Jamal Murray might have a higher ceiling than Michael Porter Jr., but that's about it, okay? So you would hope that eventually Porter can be getting at least 20 minutes a game, right? But of course, then the idea is, well, who actually loses minutes? I mean, Will Barton and Gary Harris are both at 32 minutes a game right now. I feel like you could drop them down to the high 20s and there wouldn't be much of a problem. Torrey Craig and Malik Beasley are at 16 minutes a game. And I wouldn't be shocked if one of them got moved, because both of those dudes are restricted free agents, and when you're trying to get a guy like Michael Porter Jr. in, because there's no way he's just going to ride the bench for years, you might just have to let somebody go, and both of those guys have value. I mean, Beasley is more of an offensive dude who has shown some defensive life, and Torrey Craig is more of a defender, and they both have had good minutes for this team and in the playoffs, but I mean, it's just kind of the way it goes. Michael Porter Jr. should be better than both of those guys. So sometimes you just got to make those sorts of decisions. And I do think some teams would be interested in Malik Beasley. I mean, I do think in a role where he's really able to just play with not as many restrictions and minutes and all that, I feel like he could get to like 16, 17 points a game with, not too much trouble. I mean, he did shoot 40% on 5 threes a game last season. Now, he has barely ever shot a free throw in his career, so that's a little alarming. But I do think he's pretty good. So maybe you could get something back for him, and then you could allow Porter to play like 20 minutes a game, we would guess. I mean, some simple math. He plays 9 right now. You take away Beasley's 16, that would actually be like 25. So maybe something like that, we'll have to see. Although Porter has played 6 games this year, so there are some games when he's played 0, so maybe that throws my math off a little bit. I have to believe that they see that this guy needs to be getting a lot of minutes soon enough. Anyway, if we talk about Porter just as a player and how he's looked so far, it is difficult to have a real opinion just because he hasn't played much, but I have liked his mentality. He has had quotes already where he's basically been like, yeah, I get it, this is not a normal situation for a guy of, what he believes to be his talent, where the team is good and they're trying to be as good as possible, right? So they can't just throw you in there for as many minutes and give you all the touches and everything that you want. And he's talking about, I just got to be ready, and that's all cool. And this might be the right way to go about it too, because the guy's coming off of an injury and whatever else. So I don't blame Denver for being a little hesitant, but as far as just how he's looked, I mean, there have been a few times where he's basically been like, all right, I'm just going to shoot the damn ball. And his percentages have been pretty good, and he's made a few contested shots, but he also has attempted a few where you're like, okay, not the best shot in the world for how many minutes you're playing, but that's who you drafted at the same time. I mean, if this guy really is this big-time scorer who can score, 25 a game or something, I think that was the hope with, where he was originally going to be drafted before the back injury, then you've got to expect that. He's not going to come around and just set screens and run handoff plays and just play defense. He's going to shoot the ball a little bit. And to be fair, he's been making shots. He has not been terrible when he has attempted them. And I've looked at a few of his misses, and they're pretty good. A lot of them have been open shots that are just simply not gone in. I will say his jump shot looks a little awkward for a guy who's supposed to be as good of a shooter as he is. There's like a weirdness to it where it's not like one motion. It's like this weird, go to the top of his head, stop for a split second, and then shoot it. But, I mean, if he's supposed to be a great shooter, then I'm just going to assume he's going to be fine. Another thing that has been cool is he's attacking the offensive glass a little bit. I mean, he's averaging 1 offensive rebound a game, and he's barely playing, so that's pretty cool. He's also shown a willingness to cut to the basket, which is nice because when you're a guy who is, what is he, 6'10", with some good finishing abilities? Yeah, I mean, you can be kind of a force if you're just attacking off the ball a lot. And you assume he's going to be a guy who's going to draw a lot of fouls as well. So, I mean, the blueprints are there for him to be a great scorer. Like, if you can make threes and you can draw a lot of contact, and because you're 6'10", I'm just going to assume you can, on top of his willingness to already mix it up inside, then that's pretty good. Now, I could read some advanced stats off, but he's played so many few minutes that, I don't think it would accomplish anything. So we're just going to have to see how the Nuggets go about this. I do think letting go of Beasley or Craig may be the way to go about it. I mean, they're both restricted free agents, so especially in the case of Beasley, there's a chance you're just not going to be able to keep him anyway because, this team is committed to some salaries between Jokic and Murray. Now, at the same time, they're not actually swamped with salary. I mean, I guess if they re-sign Millsap, that could throw something into it, but, in next season, they're at $109 million. The year after that, they have to come to a decision on Jeremy Grant's contract, but they're not hugging the luxury tax, so maybe they would just bring everybody back, but I don't know. I just feel like Porter needs to have long-term priority over damn near everybody on this roster, or at least pretty much everybody coming off the bench right now. I mean, we can argue that Gary Harris is more important for this team long-term than Michael Porter, but I doubt anybody thinks Malik Beasley is more important long-term than him, so yeah. We'll just see how that all goes. I think, so far Porter has handled it pretty well.